the last Concordia, with the permission of the House, I'd like to share my time with Deputy Martin, please. And at the outset, on behalf of the Social Democrats, I want to extend our condolences and deepest sympathy to the family and friends of the late Emma Vic Vahuna, and to pay tribute to her for the extraordinary work which she has done during her short life in terms of improving the health services for everybody in this country, and particularly for women in this country. It's been quite amazing, really. In relation to the budget, in the context of a situation where the two big crises facing the country are in relation to housing and in relation to health, it has to be said that yesterday's budget fell very far short of what was required on both of those counts. And I want to concentrate my comments today on the implications of yesterday's budget for the health service, and the fact that that budget was extremely disappointing when it came to making provision for health and for health reform in particular. And that's especially the case in the context of a situation where we have a fully costed 10-year reform programme that has cross-party support called Sláintecare. And my view is that the government has squandered this unique opportunity to do something of real consequence in relation to the health service, and to ensure that we bring about the kind of reforms that would ensure access and efficiency in our public health service, so that people living in Ireland could avail of similar access and accountability and affordability in relation to our health services, which all other European countries ensure is available for their citizens. And we are an outlier in this regard because of the very poor quality of our public health service and major problems in relation to lack of access. So it's a squandered opportunity when it comes to health. And I must say, I think the government has been extremely disingenuous in relation to the whole health area and the need for health reform. What we've seen over the past 15 months or so is the government paying lip service to Sláintecare. So I think many of us were concerned, particularly those of us who are concerned in all of the hard work over the space of a year that went into producing the Sláintecare report. Many of us had serious concerns that the government were not actually going to be serious about this, and that the government would engage in cherry-picking those elements of Sláintecare that suited their own particular agenda or their own particular ideology. And unfortunately, that is what has happened. What we've seen is the government and Minister Harris in particular being very cynical about the whole issue of Sláintecare, using the brand of Sláintecare to cover really their shortcomings in terms of their inability to commit fully to Sláintecare, rather than committing wholeheartedly to that programme. They simply use Sláintecare as a brand and, take every opportunity to name-check Sláintecare without actually being serious about ensuring that it is actually delivered. So, what we need from the Minister and what we need from government is courage and commitment to Sláintecare, and regrettably that was not evident yesterday in the budget. So, as many feared, the government has failed to fund the Sláintecare programme. Much has been made of the €17 billion, the highest ever allocation to health. This represents a €2.25 billion increase on the 2018 estimate. But the government talks about this as if additional funding in itself is enough. Providing additional funding without a reform programme is yet again throwing money into the black hole that our health service is. What matters is how you spend money, not the amount you allocate, but how you actually spend the money that is allocated. And the recent 700 million overspend, there's no discussion about that, no discussion about how it arose, no discussion about it being funded. The Fiscal Council drew attention to this in recent weeks about the fact that government just happened to find an extra €1 billion from corporation tax and says, here you are, HSE, take this extra money and take it next year as well. And we're not going to ask any questions because there's no strings attached. So there's no proposals at all for control of funding. It's an extraordinary profligacy, I think, on behalf of the government in relation to the use of taxpayers' money. Look, take this money, we're putting it into the black hole again without any controls whatsoever. So it seems that the government merely intends to keep chasing the deficit in health. And this is a zero-sum game, because at the end of this, where are we? Is the budget going to continue year on year, increasing by €1 billion, while no reforms are implemented and we get very poor value for money? So, where is the accountability here? I noticed the word accountability was used in the Minister's speech yesterday, where he talked about, in relation to health, I continue to look at choices that we have to make in healthcare regarding how we can accompany all-time high levels of investment with improved governance, accountability, effectiveness and value for money. So what the Minister is saying is, right, an extra overspend of €700 million, we will continue to look at choices to ensure accountability for and value for money. Those measures are included in the Sláintecare report, but the Minister merely says he's going to continue to look at choices. You'd have to ask about the name of the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform. Where is the reform in this? The Department of Public Expenditure and Reform seems to be asleep at the wheel when it comes to accountability, when it comes to value for money and so on, in respect of the health budget. And it's an extraordinary shift away from the kind of demanding figures that they would have insisted on just a few years ago. And, for a government that prides itself or likes to claim that it's responsible in relation to the use of taxpayers' money, it's anything but in relation to the health budget. The whole purpose of Sláintecare is to change the way that we deliver services, so that we move to a lower cost model of care. There is no effort to do that at all in yesterday's budget. Sláintecare provided for a transition fund of €500 million. So that was to provide for that shift away from the expensive hospital model to the community and primary care model. So it was for things like, extra primary care centres, the e-health programme, which would result in considerable changes and savings in how we deliver care, training for additional primary care staff, hospital beds. There's no indication that the Minister gets it when it comes to the transition fund. It's not in the implementation plan, it's not in the NDP, and it wasn't in the budget yesterday. So fears about departmental capture of Sláintecare, it seems, are very well founded. Seeing that disease which has dogged the civil service for many years, implementation deficit disorder, it would appear absolutely impacts on what has happened to Sláintecare. Many of us were concerned that there would be departmental capture of Sláintecare, and that, of course, is what has happened, where they took the Sláintecare implementation programme and they changed it to their own departmental implementation programme, and, of course, ignores the requirement for that transition fund. So, for an example, what the transition fund was about was ensuring that we got savings. We got savings from implementing the full e-health programme in 6 years rather than 15 years. There was an allocation of €175 million for e-health. What did we get yesterday? We got a mere €25 million. For example, we were talking about the need to ensure that we had better services in the community for those 6,000 people who are on waiting lists for home care packages, so that we had better services in the community for the 600 people who are currently in acute hospital beds. So again, the idea was to move from the expensive model of care in our acute hospitals to community and primary services, and that needed to be funded, but of course it wasn't funded. No additional funding for home care packages. The whole idea of community diagnostics, no funding for those. The idea was that there was to be a €500 million implementation transition fund. What we got yesterday was less than €200 million. The Minister, when he was asked about this yesterday, he said, oh, the transition fund is a 200 million allocation. That's less than half what was required. But it's not, of course, even 200 million euro. It's actually 20 million euro under the specific heading of Sláinte Care for pilot projects. At this stage, we should have moved way beyond pilot projects. What we needed to do was to have real radical change and a shift in the way we provide our health services. Other aspects, of course, are in relation to the package of care. How do we improve access to health services? How do we move away from that two-tier discriminatory system that we have at the moment? And, how do we fully fund services for people so that the cost is not a barrier to accessing timely care, especially in relation to, as I say, inpatient charges in hospitals, but also ensuring there's an adequate supply of home care packages. When it comes to Sláinte Care, it seems the government is merely tinkering around the edges, and there is no real commitment to the kind of large-scale radical reforms set out in the Sláinte Care programme, and this undoubtedly is a missed opportunity. I want to speak for a moment about the NTPF. €70 million being provided next year for that, an additional €20 million announced yesterday. And Fianna Fáil have made a lot of this figure. The fact of the matter is that the NTPF compounds the kind of dysfunction that's in our two-tier health service at the moment. Look, we have a public service that is supposed to provide services, but rather than ensuring that we get good value for money for those services and that we deal with the blockages that are, holding up throughput of patients for their elective surgery, rather than doing that, and rather than introducing those kind of reforms that are necessary in terms of hospital stays, the length of time that consultants spend working in their public contracts, rather than doing that, what we've done is we've said, leave things as they are. Leave them as they are, and let's incentivise more work in the private service. And that's effectively what the NTPF is doing. So in many respects, it is paying people on the double for doing work that should be done in the public service and incentivising more of that work to be done in the public service. So, this is not about reform again. And, I wish Fianna Fáil would get that message. Fianna Fáil participated in the Sláinte Care Committee and they should have got that message loud and clear. The NTPF actually works against reform of the health service. It's a perverse incentive and we shouldn't be promoting it further. We should be implementing the kind of reform set out clearly in Sláinte Care. So, what we need is more concentration on tackling those long delays and ensure that the kind of reforms that are set out in Sláinte Care are actually implemented. I have serious questions about some of the accounts that were used yesterday, and you'd have to ask, is the health budget and are the health budget figures wrong already? Because they simply don't add up. And two examples of that are on the NTPF. Again, all this kind of, talk about the extra €20 million. When you actually look at the accounts on page 16, you'll see that a mere €10 million additional has been provided. Where's the other 10 million and where's that coming from? Equally, I'd say in the estimates, there's a figure of €491 million net pension costs for 2019. That's almost €500 million. Money, what is that about? There's no explanation of that, no comparative figure for the current year. How do we come up again with that figure? Where has it come from? What does it represent? No detail on it whatsoever. I also want to say just that I note the comments of the Fianna Fáil leader this morning on Morning Ireland, where he started, it would seem, very late in the day to express concern about the health budget. And he said the health budget in respect of Sláinte Care needs to be part of a review. Well, it's a bit late in the day to review the allocation in respect of Sláinte Care. Fianna Fáil claim that they have their fingerprints on this budget. They were in negotiations with government. Well, it's a bit late to be talking about Sláinte Care at this stage. Why weren't Fianna Fáil putting it front and centre of the health budget months ago? So we have a choice. We have a choice. Do we continue as the only country in Europe which denies universal access to timely health care to a large number of our citizens? And do we continue using health as a political football? And it seems that is the desire of both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. We're going to continue with an unreformed, divided, two-tier public health service, a two-tier health service that denies so many people access to care. And we will continue to have the knockabout in relation to health. It's going to continue to be a political football. We had the choice whether to do that or to do something of real consequence in terms of the health service and bring about the kind of reform that will make a difference to the current generation and to future generations and to bring us into line with the rest of Europe. Sadly, it seems that government have squandered the opportunity to do that in yesterday's budget. Thank you.